It is important not to miss the obvious here. In fact, impossible to ignore it as you drive around. The town motto, malice toward none, seems obsolete. America's national spirit has been galvanized. Stop at any front porch and you hear the new patriotism articulated.
I really think that we should go over and just get rid of them completely. Because we're a superpower. How dare they? That's my whole take on it. How dare they?
Away from the big cities, away from the violations of New York and of Washington, it is in places like this that the president's declarations of war are being most carefully sifted from the shock and the outrage of the moment. If America is to go into battle against terrorism, then parents here in Lockhaven may pay with the lives of their children. And for some, a war against terrorism looks too much like a blank check. Their afternoon on the riverbank only underlines the tranquility and well-being that is now at stake for Adam and his friends. With the networks shouting about America's new war, no one here can now take peace for granted. So are these young men prepared to fight?
I never thought about joining the Army, but if I were drafted, then I'd be obligated to go. And that would be a totally different story. I would be very patriotic about it. I would go without asking questions, but back in my head, I wouldn't want to really be there and try to sacrifice myself for the good of others.
Are you prepared to be called up?
Not really. I hope I never get called up. It's scary. I don't know. It's shocking.
As lunch continues long into the afternoon, their parents consider the repercussions of the attack and what war will actually mean.
I have two sons, and I don't want to see them in harm's way just because we reacted too harshly.
Do you think there's a real prospect that whatever war is being talked about now will involve your two sons?
Right now, I don't feel like it will, but President Bush said that down the road, it's going to take a long time, take years, and so it will. If he calls up all boys over 18, it will. One son's 17, one's 15.
You don't feel ready for that?
That's all we have. But if that's what's needed, that's what's needed.
This isn't going to be the Gulf War, where you went home at night, ate your dinner, turned the TV on like you were watching a football game. This is going to go on for years and years, and we have to do it now.
In the First World War, the young poet Isaac Rosenberg asked, "What in our lives is burnt in the fire of this?" They are asking the same question across Lockhaven, across America. Well, I spoke earlier to Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State for almost 30 years ago under President Nixon. I put it to him that what we'd heard, admittedly from the limited interviewing that we had done, suggested there might be reservations in the country about young people being drafted to fight a war that still wasn't very clearly defined.
Nobody's being drafted. Our army is all volunteer. And
well, that is their fear. So do you see where that's coming from?
I believe that most Americans that I have talked to understand that when 4 airplanes can be hijacked and their passengers killed, when there can be an attack on downtown New York in which 5,000 people are missing, that it does not require an extensive explanation why the United States should want to bring about a situation in which this cannot happen again. I don't think that is disputed in America.
Given your country's history, particularly with Vietnam, there surely will be a reluctance, maybe hardening over time, to get into something which is open-ended and not well-defined.
I don't think this is a comparable situation to Vietnam, and I believe that if these phrases like open-ended, not clearly defined, it's not easy to clearly define a war against shadowy opponents that have no fixed location, or not many fixed locations. My instinct is that this will be more comparable to Pearl Harbor, and that the American people will stay the course that may be needed. And I don't know how long that will be, or whether it will be very long.
Do you think, Dr. Kissinger, that this attack was born out of a failure of security or out of a wider failure of foreign policy?
Of course, it is also possible that we are dealing with a hatred so profound that it is not our fault. Not everything that happens to the democracies is provoked by the democracies, unless you say our existence is provoking them. Our intelligence services have been under assault for the last 20 years, and as a result, it could be that there was not the capacity for penetrating organizations of that kind that one might wish, but these organizations are very difficult to penetrate. As to the failure of American foreign policy, you surely don't want to advance the proposition that a country dissatisfied with American foreign policy is therefore entitled to hijack planes and fly them against buildings occupied by civilians. And so whether one agrees with every last detail of American foreign policy or not does not remotely justify what has been done.
No one is suggesting that this attack was justified at any level. Do you think that America's foreign policy should in some way be adjusted to try and avoid stirring up so much hatred?
I do not accept your premise that American foreign policy stirs up all of this hatred. I have frequently criticized American foreign policy on a variety of subjects, but this does not remotely bear on this subject. The second issue, I would say, is should American foreign policy be adjusted in response to this attack? I would think that if you are known to adjust your foreign policy because an outrage has been committed against you, more and more outrages will follow. But you have to make up your mind, you people who ask these questions. If you believe America is so guilty, and if you want to dissociate from America, that is your choice, and this is a matter of profound, long-range consequence. And I am amazed at some of the comments I have heard.
Finally, Dr. Kissinger, do you think Americans were too confident that they couldn't ever be attacked directly here?
Undoubtedly. America has been too self-confident. There have been too many people in America who thought that this was a world from which this sort of hatred has been banished and which could be run entirely on the basis of global economics. There are many lessons that America will have to learn from this.
Dr. Kissinger, thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
And Kirsty, as we've said, Tony Blair coming to Washington, D.C. on Thursday, and also we understand going to New York as well to see the site where the Twin Towers came down. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, in Washington. In a moment, a look at tomorrow morning's papers, but first a roundup of today's news stories. Our main story tonight, sources in Afghanistan have told Newsnight that the Taliban government, due to respond to a Pakistani delegation tomorrow, will not hand over Osama bin Laden. The new leader of the Conservative Party, Ian Duncan Smith, has offered a suspension of party politics for as long as the war against terrorism continues. Mr. Duncan Smith says he wants to give the government his full cooperation during this crisis.
British people need to be certain that together we go forward, that is to say that we suspend to a degree the normal political to and fro. And what I've said all along is if the government comes forward with specific requests, we would certainly want to help accommodate them in this process, because these are exceptional times and exceptional times need exceptional measures.
John Hume, the leader of Northern Ireland's SDLP, has announced he's standing down as party leader because of ill health. John Hume co-founded the SDLP in 1970. In 1998, he was jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his part in building a Northern Ireland peace process. He'll continue as an MP in both the Westminster and European parliaments.
I've had serious health problems, and it is now necessary for me to cut down on my workload.
And as we've been hearing, the financial markets have had a roller coaster day. The FTSE 100 share index in London closed up 143 points. Traders in London may have been expecting an even bigger drop in New York, where the Dow Jones opening for the first time since last Tuesday's attack closed down a whopping 684 points. Against the pound, the euro closed up. Against the dollar, sterling closed down. Tomorrow morning's front pages now begin with The Guardian, straightforwardly, defiant Taliban ready for war, and a poll in The Guardian, 2 out of 3 Britons back airstrikes. Moving on to The Times now, wanted dead or alive, that is what George Bush said today, and also Pakistan confronts the Taliban on the Daily Telegraph. Moving on to The Independent, the world on a war footing, and finally in the Daily Mail, hijackers lived in Britain. At least 5 of the US hijackers prepared for the attack in Britain. Well, that's all from Newsnight tonight, but there's round-the-clock news coverage on BBC News 24. Jeremy Paxman will be back with more tomorrow. Until then, from all of us in the programme, a very good night.